It was 3:15 p.m. on a sunny Tuesday afternoon when the neighbors on Maple Street heard the sirens. Not one, not two. 15 police vehicles converging on a quiet suburban street in Columbus, Ohio. Cruisers, K-9 units, unmarked cars, all heading to one address, 2847 Maple Street, the Wilson residence. Mrs. Patterson from across the street looked out her window and froze. There, in the front yard of the Wilson home, stood a sight she would never forget. 15 German Shepherd police dogs, each with their handler, forming a perfect circle around one small figure, 6-year-old Emma Wilson. The little girl stood completely still in her Sunday dress, her small hands at her sides, surrounded by some of the most highly trained police dogs in the state. Each dog sitting at attention, each pair of eyes focused on her. The street went silent. Neighbors emerged from their homes. Someone had already called 911 again. Parents pulled their children inside. Everyone was thinking the same thing. What is happening to that little girl? But what happened next? What Emma did, what those dogs did, and why 15 K-9 units had descended on a suburban home would make national news, bring a community to tears, and prove that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are the smallest ones. Before we dive into this incredible true story, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. This story will take you on an emotional roller coaster you'll never forget, and I promise the ending will leave you speechless. Let me take you back 6 months before that extraordinary day. Emma Wilson was not your typical 6-year-old. Born with a rare developmental condition called selective mutism, Emma hadn't spoken a single word out loud since she was 3 years old. Not to her parents, not to her teachers, not to doctors or therapists or anyone. She could speak. Medical tests proved her vocal cords worked perfectly. But something in her brain, some deeply rooted anxiety, prevented her from using her voice around people. Her parents, Michael and Sarah Wilson, had tried everything: speech therapy, play therapy, occupational therapy, medications, specialists from 3 different states. They'd spent their life savings searching for answers. "She used to talk," Sarah would tell anyone who asked, tears always threatening. "She had the sweetest little voice. She'd sing songs, tell us stories about her stuffed animals, ask a million questions. And then one day, she just stopped." At school, Emma communicated through a tablet. At home, she used hand signals and written notes. Her younger brother, Jake, who was 4, had learned to understand her gestures better than anyone. But Emma wasn't silent in every way. She had one extraordinary gift that no one, not even her parents, fully understood. Emma could communicate with dogs. Not in some mystical, supernatural way, but in a way that every dog trainer, veterinarian, and animal behaviorist who met her called unprecedented and remarkable. Dogs responded to Emma in ways they didn't respond to anyone else. It started when Emma was 4, shortly after she'd stopped speaking to humans. The family had adopted a rescue dog, a traumatized German Shepherd named Duke, who'd been abused and was scheduled to be put down for aggression. Every trainer had given up on Duke. He wouldn't let anyone touch him. He'd growl, snap, and hide. The rescue organization had warned the Wilsons he probably couldn't be rehabilitated, but Emma had sat down on the floor, 3 feet away from Duke's crate, and simply waited. She didn't reach out, didn't try to coax him, didn't make eye contact. She just sat there, silent and still, occasionally humming softly. After 20 minutes, Duke had emerged from his crate. After an hour, his head was in her lap. After 2 hours, he was asleep beside her. From that day forward, Duke was Emma's shadow. He slept by her bed, walked her to the school bus, waited at the window for her return, and most importantly, he seemed to understand her completely despite her silence. "It's like they speak the same language," Michael told their family therapist. the language of quiet understanding. But Duke was just the beginning. Word spread in the local animal rescue community about the little girl who could reach impossible dogs. Rescues started calling. Could Emma help with a dog too traumatized to be adopted? A dog with severe anxiety? A dog everyone else had given up on? Sarah was hesitant at first. Emma's not a dog trainer. She's a 6-year-old child who needs help herself. But Emma wanted to help. She couldn't say it out loud, but she wrote it in her notebook. The dogs need me. And so on weekends, Emma would visit the rescue center. One by one, she'd sit with the impossible dogs, the ones cowering in corners, the ones showing aggression, the ones who'd been failed by humans so many times they'd given up on trust. And one by one, they'd come to her. She'd helped rehabilitate 17 dogs in 6 months. 17 dogs who'd been scheduled for euthanasia. 17 dogs who found homes because of a silent little girl who understood their language. The rescue center started calling her the dog whisperer. But Emma's gift would soon be tested in a way no one could have imagined. And it would involve the Columbus Police Department's entire K-9 unit. It started with a dog named Thor. Thor was a 4-year-old German Shepherd, one of the Columbus Police Department's most decorated K-9 officers. He'd been with the force for 3 years. Apprehensions, 47. Drug fines, 134. Missing persons found, 8, including 2 children who would have died without him. Thor was a hero. His handler, Officer Jake Morrison, 35, was one of the best K-9 officers in the state. He and Thor had that rare bond, the kind where each knew what the other was thinking. They'd faced down armed suspects together, searched collapsed buildings, saved lives. Thor isn't just my partner, Jake would say. He's my best friend. I trust him with my life. But 3 weeks ago, everything changed. Thor and Jake were conducting a routine building search, a warehouse where a suspect had been seen. Standard procedure. They'd done it 100 times, but this time, something went wrong. The suspect had set a trap. As Thor rounded a corner, a metal shelf collapsed. Hundreds of pounds of metal and inventory came crashing down. Thor took the full impact, shielding Jake. The dog survived. Emergency veterinary surgery saved his life. 3 broken ribs, a fractured leg, internal bruising. But physically, Thor would recover. Mentally was a different story. When Thor came home from the veterinary hospital, he wasn't the same dog. He wouldn't work, wouldn't respond to commands, would barely eat. He'd flinch at sudden movements, refuse to enter buildings. And most heartbreaking of all, he wouldn't connect with Jake anymore. The vet said it was severe PTSD, canine post-traumatic stress disorder. The trauma from the accident had broken something fundamental in Thor's working dog psyche. We see it sometimes, the veterinarian explained. Police dogs, military dogs, they experience trauma just like human officers, and sometimes their minds can't process it. The Columbus Police Department brought in specialists, animal behaviorists, the best K-9 trainers in the country. They tried medications, desensitization protocols, everything. Nothing worked. Thor was getting worse. He'd started showing aggression, something he'd never done before, growling at strangers, snapping when approached. He'd even growled at Jake. The department psychiatrist was blunt. Thor's career is over, and if he continues declining, he may need to be put down before he hurts someone. Jake was devastated. He saved my life. There has to be something we can do. That's when Officer Maria Chen, one of Jake's colleagues, mentioned something she'd heard. My sister volunteers at the animal rescue on 5th Street. She told me about this little girl who works with traumatized dogs. Says she's done things no professional trainer could do. Maybe it's worth a shot? Jake was skeptical. A little girl? Maria? Thor's a trained police dog with severe PTSD. This needs professional help. I know how it sounds, Maria said. But my sister showed me videos. This kid is remarkable. What do you have to lose? What Jake didn't know was that Thor's situation was about to become much more complicated, because Thor wasn't the only police dog in crisis. Within 2 weeks of Thor's incident, 3 more K9 officers showed similar symptoms. Titan, a 5-year-old Belgian Malinois, had been in a highway pursuit that ended in a multi-car crash. He'd witnessed his handler get injured. Now he wouldn't get in a vehicle. Shadow, a German shepherd who'd been in the force for 6 years, had been involved in a shooting. A suspect had fired at police. Shadow wasn't hurt, but the sound of gunfire had triggered something. Now he panicked at any loud noise. Rex, another Malinois, had been searching a condemned building when part of the floor collapsed. He'd fallen 10 feet, physically fine but mentally shattered. 4 police dogs, 4 cases of severe PTSD, all within a month. The Columbus K9 unit was in crisis. Captain David Rodriguez called an emergency meeting with the entire K9 unit. 15 dog teams, some of the best in the state. "I need to be straight with you," Captain Rodriguez said. "We're facing something unprecedented. 4 of our dogs are experiencing severe psychological trauma. The specialists we've brought in haven't been able to help. These aren't just dogs. They're officers. They're family. But we have a responsibility to public safety." He paused, the weight of what he was about to say visible on his face. "If we can't rehabilitate them in the next 30 days, we'll have no choice but to retire them. And if their aggression continues, we may have to make an even harder decision." The room was silent. Every handler knew what he meant. Jake Morrison stood up. "Captain, permission to speak?" "Go ahead, Morrison." "I've heard about something. Someone, actually. There's a little girl, I know how this sounds, but she apparently has a gift with traumatized dogs. She's helped the rescue center with cases professionals couldn't crack. I'd like permission to try." Some officers shifted uncomfortably. A few exchanged skeptical glances. Captain Rodriguez sighed. "Morrison, these are highly trained police dogs with severe PTSD. We've already had the best trainers in the country. With respect, sir, those trainers failed. What do we have to lose?" Officer Chen spoke up. "My sister has seen her work." "Captain, she says it's extraordinary. The girl doesn't train them. She connects with them. She understands their trauma somehow." Captain Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. "What's this girl's name?" "Emma Wilson. She's 6 years old, lives over on Maple Street." 6 years old? The captain rubbed his temples. "And she communicates with dogs? What are we talking about here? Some kind of dog psychic?" "No, sir," Chen said. "She has selective mutism, hasn't spoken out loud in years, but she has this ability to understand what dogs are feeling, to help them feel safe again." The captain looked around the room, at his officers, at their dogs, some of the bravest, most loyal partners law enforcement could ask for, partners who'd put their lives on the line. "All right," he said finally. "Here's what we're going to do. Morrison, you contact the family. See if they're willing to let their daughter try with Thor. 1 dog, 1 chance. If it works, we expand. If it doesn't—" He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone knew what came next. That evening, Jake Morrison stood on the porch of 2847 Maple Street, his heart pounding, wondering if he was about to make a complete fool of himself, or if he was about to witness a miracle. Sarah Wilson opened the door, surprise crossing her face at seeing a police officer on her porch. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm Officer Jake Morrison. I know this is going to sound strange, but I need to talk to you about your daughter." Sarah's protective instincts immediately kicked in. "Is Emma in trouble?" No, nothing like that. Quite the opposite. I need her help." 20 minutes later, Sarah, Michael, and Jake sat in the Wilson living room while Emma colored at the kitchen table, Duke lying beside her chair. Jake explained everything. Thor's accident, his PTSD, the failed treatments, the desperate situation. "I know it's unusual," Jake said, "but I've heard what she's done with rescue dogs, And Thor, he's my partner, my friend. I can't give up on him. Sarah looked at Michael. They'd spent years protecting Emma, shielding her from pressure and expectations, letting her heal at her own pace. Emma's not a trained therapist, Sarah said carefully. She's a little girl dealing with her own challenges. I understand. And if you say no, I completely respect that. But, Jake's voice cracked slightly, Thor saved my life, and now his life is at stake. I'm asking for a chance. Michael looked toward the kitchen, where Emma had stopped coloring and was watching them. She couldn't hear their conversation, but somehow she seemed to know. She wrote something on her paper and held it up. I can help the dog. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. It was the most direct communication Emma had offered in months. Are you sure, sweetie? Sarah asked. Emma nodded. Definitive, certain. And so, 2 days later, on a Saturday morning, Jake brought Thor to the Wilson house. The entire K-9 unit was skeptical. Some thought Jake was grasping at straws. Others thought he was delaying the inevitable. But they all understood. They'd do anything for their partners, too. Jake carried Thor out of the vehicle on a leash, keeping distance between the dog and the family. Thor's body language was tense, defensive. His ears were back. Eyes were constantly scanning for threats. Emma stood on the porch with her parents, Duke sitting calmly at her side. Mrs. Wilson, Jake said, I need you to understand. Thor isn't himself right now. He's unpredictable. I don't want Emma anywhere near him until I'm sure. Emma walked down the porch steps. Emma, wait, Sarah called out. But Emma kept walking, slowly, calmly. Not toward Thor, but to a spot about 15 feet away. She sat down cross-legged on the grass, and she waited. Thor's attention locked on her immediately. His body tensed further. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Emma, stay back, Jake warned, his hand tight on the leash. But Emma did something unexpected. She didn't look at Thor. She looked at the sky, at the trees, at the grass, anywhere but at the traumatized dog. It was the same technique she'd used with Duke, with all the rescue dogs. She made herself non-threatening, patient, present, but not demanding. 5 minutes passed. Thor stopped growling but remained tense. 10 minutes. Thor sat down, still alert but slightly less defensive. 15 minutes. Thor's ears shifted forward slightly, curiosity beginning to override fear. 20 minutes. Thor took a step toward Emma, then another. Jake felt the leash go slack. Emma began humming. Not a song, just a soft, gentle melody. The same sound she made when she felt safe. Thor took 3 more steps. He was now 10 feet from Emma. Jake was frozen, barely breathing. Every instinct told him to pull Thor back. But something made him wait. Emma slowly extended her hand, not toward Thor, just out to her side, palm down, an offering, no pressure. Thor stared at her hand, at her face, at this small human who wasn't afraid of him, wasn't demanding anything from him, wasn't trying to fix him. This human who was simply there. Then Thor walked forward and touched his nose to her hand. Emma's hand moved, slowly, so slowly, to rest on Thor's head. And Thor, the police dog who'd been growing at everyone for 3 weeks, who'd been deemed too dangerous and traumatized to help, closed his eyes and leaned into her touch. Jake Morrison, a decorated police officer who'd been in high-pressure situations his entire career, started crying. "How did she do that?" he whispered. Sarah, watching from the porch with tears streaming down her face, whispered back, "I don't know, but she always does." For the next hour, Emma sat with Thor. She didn't try to make him perform commands or prove he was fixed. She just sat with him, letting him feel safe, letting him understand that not every human was a threat, that the world could be kind again. When it was time for Jake to leave, Thor walked calmly to the vehicle. No resistance, no fear. He looked back once at Emma, and his tail, which hadn't wagged in 3 weeks, gave one small wag. "Can I bring him back?" Jake asked. "Tomorrow? Maybe a few more sessions?" "Yes," Emma wrote on her tablet, then added, "Bring the other dogs, too." "Other dogs?" "The ones who are scared like Thor." Jake looked at her, this 6-year-old girl who couldn't speak but somehow understood the language of traumatized souls. "I'll talk to my captain," he said. Captain Rodriguez was skeptical. "Morrison, you're telling me this little girl who can't even speak somehow helped Thor in 1 session. What did she do?" "Nothing, sir. And everything. She just understood him. She gave him space and time and patience, things we didn't have the ability to provide in a clinical setting." "And you want to bring 3 more traumatized police dogs to a residential neighborhood to be helped by a 6-year-old? "Yes, sir." The captain was silent for a long moment. "The liability issues alone—" "Captain, these dogs saved lives. They ran into danger to protect us. Don't they deserve every chance?" Rodriguez sighed. "All right, but we do this carefully. Controlled environment. Multiple handlers present. At the first sign of danger, we shut it down. Understood?" "Yes, sir." And so, the following Saturday, 4 K9 vehicles arrived at Maple Street. Thor with Jake Morrison, Titan with Officer Sarah Chen, Shadow with Officer Marcus Williams, Rex with Officer Amy Rodriguez, 4 traumatized dogs, 4 desperate handlers, 1 silent little girl. The neighbors watched from windows and porches, some concerned, some curious, all wondering what was happening on their quiet street. The Wilsons' front yard became a makeshift therapy space. Emma had asked her parents to set up specific things: blankets for the dogs to lie on, toys scattered casually around, water bowls, a shaded area. Everything designed to be calm and non-threatening. Emma sat in the center of it all, Duke beside her. One by one, with 20-foot distances between them, the handlers brought their dogs into the yard. The officers watched, tense and ready to intervene. Emma did what she always did. She waited. She didn't approach the dogs, didn't make demands, just sat, occasionally humming her gentle melody, sometimes writing in a notebook, always calm. It took longer with 4 dogs. The dynamics were complex. 4 traumatized animals, each dealing with their own demons, all in the same space. But slowly, remarkably, one by one, the dogs responded. Thor came to her first. He remembered that this human meant safety. Shadow followed, drawn by curiosity more than trust. But when Emma's hand rested gently on his head, something in him relaxed. Titan took longer. 20 minutes of pacing the perimeter before he worked up the courage to approach. But when he did, Emma let him sniff her hand, her hair, her clothes, letting him gather information, letting him decide she was safe. Rex was the hardest. His trauma was the deepest. He stayed at the far edge of the yard, his body language screaming fear. Emma didn't push. She waited. After an hour, Rex took 1 step closer, then stopped. Emma hummed her melody, never looking directly at him. Another step. And another. Until finally, Rex lay down 10 feet from Emma. Not close enough to touch, but close enough to be part of the group. It was enough. The handlers watched in stunned silence. "I've been doing this for 12 years, Officer Williams whispered. "I've never seen anything like this." Sarah Wilson stood on the porch, her heart swelling with pride and breaking with love for her daughter. This little girl who couldn't speak to humans but could heal the souls of traumatized animals. The sessions continued, every Saturday for 4 weeks, sometimes twice a week, and something miraculous happened. The dogs healed, not overnight, not magically, but gradually, steadily, they began to find themselves again. Thor started responding to commands with Jake. His confidence returned. His trust in humans rebuilt. Titan got back in vehicles, first for short trips, then longer ones. Shadow began to tolerate loud noises. The panic attacks decreased. Even Rex, the most traumatized, showed improvement. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. The K9 unit started calling Emma the miracle worker. But Emma would disagree if she could speak. She wasn't performing miracles. She was simply doing what came naturally to her, understanding beings who communicated differently, who felt deeply, who needed patience and space and unconditional acceptance, just like she did. Word of Emma's work spread beyond the Columbus K9 unit. Other police departments called. We heard about this girl who helps police dogs. The Ohio State Police K9 Division reached out. They had 3 dogs struggling with PTSD from a particularly violent incident involving their handler getting shot. The Cleveland Police Department had 2 dogs who'd been in a building fire. The Cincinnati Police Department had 1 dog who'd been attacked by a suspect and hadn't worked since. Before long, requests were coming from across the state. The Wilsons were overwhelmed. Sarah was protective of Emma. She's 6 years old. This is too much pressure. But Emma wrote in her notebook, "The dogs need me, please." Captain Rodriguez proposed a solution. What if we bring them to Emma? Create a program, official, structured. We call it the K9 Rehabilitation Initiative. Emma would work with police dogs who've experienced trauma. We'd provide support, documentation, proper protocols, and we'd make sure Emma is protected and supported too. And if Emma can't help them all? Michael asked. She's not a miracle worker. We understand, but what she's already done for 4 dogs that 3 specialists couldn't help, that's significant. Even if she helps 50%, that's lives saved, both dogs and the officers who depend on them. After long discussions, the Wilsons agreed. With conditions. Emma would only work on weekends, only for a few hours, only when she felt comfortable, and school and her own therapy would always come first. Over the next 3 months, Emma worked with 14 more police dogs from across Ohio, not all success stories, 2 dogs she couldn't reach. Their trauma was too deep, their trust too shattered. It broke her heart, but she understood. Sometimes even the best intentions can't heal every wound. But she helped 12 out of 14. 12 police dogs who returned to duty. 12 officers who got their partners back. 12 teams that saved lives. The story went national. News crews came to Maple Street. The silent girl who heals police dogs became a headline from CNN to NBC. The governor of Ohio heard about Emma, and that's when Captain Rodriguez got the call. "Morrison," the captain said, gathering the entire K9 unit, "the governor wants to honor Emma Wilson. He's awarding her the Ohio Civilian Medal of Valor. It's the highest honor the state gives to civilians." The room erupted in applause. "There's going to be a ceremony," Rodriguez continued, "at the state capitol, full police honors. And he's requested that all the K9 units Emma helped be there. Every single dog and handler team." Jake Morrison's eyes widened. "Sir, that's 15 teams. 15 police dogs in one place for a ceremony." "I'm aware." "Sir, with respect, these are working dogs. Some still recovering from trauma. All in one space with crowds and noise and—" "I know, Morrison. But this is the governor's office. This is happening. We'll take every precaution. But those dogs and their handlers owe Emma Wilson. We're going to be there." And so, on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, exactly 6 months after the first time Emma sat with Thor, 15 police vehicles rolled down Maple Street. 15 K9 units, 15 German Shepherds and Belgian Malinois, 15 handlers, all there to honor a 6-year-old girl who couldn't speak but had given them their lives back. The neighbors of Maple Street would never forget what they saw that day. Mrs. Patterson from across the street was filming on her phone when the vehicles started arriving. "Oh my God," she whispered as vehicle after vehicle parked along the street. "What is happening?" 15 police officers stepped out, each in full dress uniform, each holding a leash attached to a magnificent German Shepherd or Belgian Malinois. Emma stood on her porch in her favorite yellow dress, holding her mother's hand. She'd been told about the ceremony, but she hadn't quite understood what it meant. She certainly hadn't expected this. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, speaking into a small microphone so the gathering crowd of neighbors could hear. "Neighbors of Maple Street, thank you for your patience today. I'm Captain David Rodriguez of the Columbus Police Department K-9 Unit. We're here today to honor one of your own, Emma Wilson." Emma squeezed her mother's hand tighter. "6 months ago," the captain continued, "our unit faced a crisis. 4 of our K-9 officers experienced severe trauma. These aren't just dogs, they're sworn officers. They risk their lives alongside their human partners every single day. When they suffer, we all suffer." The crowd was silent, listening. Specialists couldn't help them. The best trainers in the country couldn't reach them. We were running out of options and running out of time. His voice caught. And then Officer Morrison heard about a little girl on Maple Street who had a gift. He gestured to Emma. Emma Wilson is 6 years old. She has selective mutism, which means she doesn't speak out loud. But she has something more powerful than words. She has understanding, patience, compassion. She speaks the language that traumatized souls understand, the language of unconditional acceptance. Officers throughout the crowd nodded, some wiping their eyes. "Emma helped 4 of our dogs when no one else could. Then word spread. She's now helped 15 police K-9s from across Ohio return to duty. 15 dogs who can continue protecting our communities, 15 officers who have their partners back, and countless lives that will be saved because these teams are back in service." Captain Rodriguez turned fully to Emma. "Emma Wilson, the state of Ohio, the Columbus Police Department, and every K-9 handler here wants to thank you. You're a hero." Then something happened that made everyone watching catch their breath. Captain Rodriguez gave a signal, and all 15 handlers released their dogs. 15 police dogs, highly trained, some still recovering, all incredibly disciplined, moved forward as one. Not running, not chaotic, but walking with purpose toward the little girl on the porch. Sarah instinctively stepped in front of Emma, but Captain Rodriguez held up his hand. "Trust them, Mrs. Wilson, please." The dogs formed a circle around Emma, not threatening, not crowding, but surrounding her in what looked like protection, like a honor guard. Thor sat directly in front of Emma, his eyes locked on hers with unmistakable devotion and gratitude. Shadow and Rex flanked her sides. The others completed the circle, each sitting at perfect attention, each watching her with that unique expression dogs have when they've bonded with someone who saved them. Emma, this little girl who'd spent years feeling isolated by her inability to speak, was surrounded by 15 of the most loyal, brave, loving beings in the world. And every single one of them knew exactly what she'd done for them. Mrs. Patterson, still filming, was crying. "Are you seeing this?" she whispered to her husband. "Are you seeing this?" Every neighbor who'd come outside was crying. Grown men, tough police officers, everyone. Captain Rodriguez's voice was thick with emotion. "Emma, these dogs know what you did. They can't speak either, but they understand. They want you to know that you saved them, and by saving them, you saved us." He held out a medal, the Ohio Civilian Medal of Valor, gleaming in the afternoon sun. "On behalf of the state of Ohio and law enforcement across this state, we present you with this honor. You're the youngest person ever to receive it, and you earned every bit of it." Sarah and Michael were both crying now. Sarah gently urged Emma forward, and the little girl walked down the porch steps into the circle of dogs. Captain Rodriguez knelt down to her level and placed the medal around her neck. Emma looked at the medal, then at the dogs surrounding her, then at the officers standing at attention, at her neighbors watching with tears streaming down their faces, at her parents, who looked at her with such overwhelming pride and love, and Emma Wilson, who hadn't spoken out loud in 3 years, who communicated through silence and gestures and written words, did something that shocked everyone. She smiled. Not just a small smile, a huge, radiant, joyful smile that lit up her entire face. And she spoke. One word, barely a whisper. But in the silence of that moment, everyone heard it. "Thanks." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. Michael made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Emma had spoken. The first word in 3 years, and it was gratitude. Thor responded immediately, standing up and licking Emma's hand. The other dogs seemed to sense the significance of the moment, each moving slightly closer, their tails wagging, their bodies expressing the pure joy that dogs have when they're with someone they love. The street erupted in applause. The neighbors, the officers, everyone celebrating this moment. Celebrating Emma, celebrating the dogs, celebrating the power of compassion and connection. Captain Rodriguez wiped his eyes. "That's the power of healing," he said to Sarah and Michael. "Emma healed those dogs, and they healed her right back." A year has passed since that extraordinary day on Maple Street. Emma Wilson is now 7 years old. She speaks, not constantly, not without difficulty, but she speaks. To her family, to her teachers, to the dogs she works with. Her selective mutism hasn't disappeared completely. Some days are harder than others, but she's made incredible progress. Her therapist calls it remarkable. Her parents call it a miracle. Emma calls it learning to use both my languages. The K9 Rehabilitation Initiative became an official program. Emma works with police dogs every other Saturday at a dedicated facility the Columbus Police Department built. It's called Emma's Place, and it's designed specifically for traumatized K9 officers. She's now helped 47 police dogs from across Ohio, Indiana, and Pennsylvania return to duty. Her success rate is 78%, far higher than traditional rehabilitation methods. Professional trainers now come to study her methods. They call it the Wilson approach, giving traumatized dogs space, time, patience, and unconditional acceptance. It's been adopted by K9 units across the country. But Emma would tell you she's not special. "I just understand them," she says quietly. "They understand me, too." Thor returned to full active duty. He and Officer Jake Morrison have made 37 apprehensions in the past year. Thor also visits Emma every month, not for therapy, just for friendship. They sit in the backyard together, sometimes for hours, two souls who understand each other perfectly. All 15 dogs from that day are back in service. All 15 are doing what they were born to do, protecting their communities, saving lives, being heroes. Shadow helped find a missing child last winter. The child had been lost in the woods for 36 hours in freezing temperatures. Shadow found her, stayed with her, kept her warm until rescue arrived. The little girl survived because of him. Rex apprehended an armed robbery suspect who'd shot at officers. No officers were harmed because of Rex's bravery. Titan discovered 150 pounds of fentanyl in a traffic stop, preventing countless overdose deaths. All of them heroes again. Because a little girl who couldn't speak showed them how to trust again. The Ohio State Legislature passed Emma's Law, providing funding for mental health support for police K9s experiencing trauma. Every K9 unit in Ohio now has access to rehabilitation resources. Emma received letters from across the world, from police departments, from military K9 handlers, from families whose loved ones were saved by the dogs Emma helped. But her favorite letter came from a 7-year-old boy in California named Tyler, who also had selective mutism. "Dear Emma," he wrote in careful handwriting, "my mom showed me the video of you with all the dogs. I can't talk either. But you showed me that being quiet doesn't mean you can't be a hero. Thank you for being brave. It helps me be brave, too." Emma keeps that letter in her room, next to her medal. Her parents framed the video that Mrs. Patterson took, the moment when 15 police dogs surrounded their daughter in a circle of protection and love. It hangs in the living room. Sarah Wilson often looks at that photo and thinks about the journey, about the little girl who stopped speaking and the parents who thought they'd never hear her voice again, about the dark days of endless therapy appointments and specialist visits that led nowhere. "We spent years trying to fix Emma's silence," Sarah says now. "We didn't realize that her silence was never broken. It was just different. She was communicating all along. We just had to learn her language." Michael adds, "And then she taught the world that sometimes the most powerful communication isn't through words at all." Emma's little brother Jake, now 5 years old, is incredibly proud of his sister. He tells everyone at his kindergarten that his sister is a hero who talks to police dogs. "She's like a superhero," he says. "But her power is being nice and quiet and making scared dogs feel better. That's the best superpower ever." The K9 unit holds an annual ceremony now on the anniversary of that day. They call it Emma's Day. Every dog Emma has helped comes back with their handler. They gather in a park, and Emma sits in the center while the dogs, sometimes 30 or 40 of them now, surround her. It's become a symbol, a reminder of what's possible when we lead with compassion instead of force. When we listen instead of demanding. When we give others the space and time they need to heal. Last month, the Columbus Police Department added a new position, K9 Wellness Coordinator. The job is to monitor the mental health of police dogs and ensure they get the support they need. It's funded entirely by donations that poured in after Emma's story went viral. People from around the world wanting to support the dogs who protect us and the little girl who protects them. And Emma? She still sits with dogs every weekend, still hums her gentle melody, still offers patience and understanding to traumatized souls who need it. But now, she also does something new. She speaks to the handlers. Quietly, in her soft voice, she tells them what their dogs are feeling, what they need, what they're afraid of. "He's not scared of you," she told one officer whose dog had started avoiding him after a traumatic incident. "He's scared for you. He thinks if he gets close, something bad will happen to you again. You have to show him you're safe, that it's okay." The officer broke down crying. "How do you know that?" Emma shrugged, petting the anxious dog beside her. "He told me, not with words, but I understand him." And she did. Because Emma Wilson learned the most important lesson anyone can learn, that communication transcends language, that understanding transcends words, that love, real, unconditional love, needs no voice at all. Sometimes it just needs patience. And sometimes the smallest voices change the world. Today, Officer Jake Morrison still partners with Thor. They're one of the most effective K9 teams in Ohio. But every time they start their shift, Jake does something that other handlers have started copying. He puts his hand on Thor's head and says, "Remember Emma. Remember that the world can be kind. Remember that you're safe." And Thor's tail wags, because he does remember. He remembers the little girl who sat patiently with him when everyone else had given up. Who showed him that silence could be powerful, that trust could be rebuilt, that trauma didn't have to be the end of the story. All 15 original dogs are still in service, still heroes, still saving lives every single day. And somewhere in Columbus, Ohio, A 7-year-old girl sits in her backyard with her German shepherd, Duke, watching the sunset. She's writing in her notebook, a habit she kept even after learning to speak again. Writing helps her process her thoughts. Today she writes, "The dogs taught me that being different isn't wrong. It's just different. And different can be exactly what someone needs." Sarah reads it over her daughter's shoulder and kisses the top of her head. "You're right, sweetheart, and the world needed exactly who you are." Emma smiles, leans against her mother, and watches as 3 butterflies dance across the yard. Duke barks once, a happy bark, and Emma laughs. It's a sound her parents will never take for granted again. The sound of their daughter finding her voice by first honoring her silence. The sound of healing. The sound of love. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with everyone who needs to hear it. Emma's story reminds us that heroes come in all forms, that compassion is the most powerful force in the world, and that sometimes being different is exactly what makes us extraordinary. Subscribe to this channel for more incredible true stories about courage, connection, and the unbreakable bonds between humans and animals. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And remember, your voice matters. Whether you speak with words or with actions, whether you communicate through sound or through silence, you have the power to change lives, just like Emma. Emma Wilson continues to work with the Canine Rehabilitation Initiative. She's now helped over 50 police dogs return to active duty. Thor and Jake Morrison recently received commendations for saving 3 lives in a hostage situation. The Canine Wellness Program Emma inspired has expanded to 12 states. Emma's message to everyone. Being quiet doesn't mean you have nothing to say. Sometimes the most important things are said without words. Thank you for watching. Until next time, keep listening to the voices that speak differently. You never know whose life you might change.